Hello, this is Ms. DB. In this video we are going to go over how to do a few of the problems from your worksheet on scale factor. Remember to first read through this section of your textbook, the matching section. There's also a very good video there that explains scale factor very well. Alright, so to start off with, we are going to find the scale dimension given the scale and the actual dimensions, and we're going to use proportions to do that. So to answer these questions, you're going to write a proportion and then answer for each problem. So there'll be two parts. There'll be the proportion as part of your work and finding the answer as part of your work. So I did number one already, but let me explain how I did that. It tells you what the scale is. It says these two, it looks like a quotation mark, but that means 1 inch equals 2 feet. That's the scale given. So that will be one of our ratios, and the actual dimension is 18 feet. So we're going to write a proportion. And our proportion is going to have two ratios equal to each other. So the first one will be the scale, 1 inch over 2 feet, written like a fraction. And that will be equal to what we're looking for is, what we're missing is the actual inches, but we know the actual dimension is feet. So we're looking at what is this value right here, and we could call that x. In fact, I'm going to switch that to x right now, so when we solve our proportion it makes more sense. So to solve a proportion, remember you learned in the last lesson that cross products are equal. So we're not going to worry about the inches and the feet right now. We're just going to look at the numbers. So 1 times 18 will equal 2 times x. You go across. And that's what I wrote. 1 times 18 equals 2 times x. And then we solve this equation. So 1 times 18 is 18. 2 times x we can write as 2x. To solve this, we need to divide both sides by 2, and we get 9. Now, what we are missing was this top number right here, and that was inches, so our answer would be the scale dimension is 9 inches. But again, there's two parts to answering this. One is setting up the proportion, and one is actually answering the question. Let's look at number 3 because there's a fraction in that one, so you might think it looks a little strange. It says that the scale is 1/2 inch equals 2 feet. The actual dimension is, I don't know what that 1/2 is sitting there for. I'll fix that on the worksheet. The actual dimension is 10 feet. Okay, so we are going to first set up our proportion. Now you can do this typing in a couple different ways. You can type just using the division bar, or you can insert an equation which would make it look more like a fraction. I'll show you how to do that. All right, so I'm just readjusting a little bit here so that you can see the top part of the Word document, and I've got all my tools shown. If you don't see all of these tools, you can click on this button here, which lets you decide to show tabs and commands, which is what I've already done. And then I'm going to go to Insert, and then under Insert there's a thing for symbols, or you might see equations right there in your screen. So I'm going to go to the equations option, and this is what your equations bar looks like. I want a fraction, so I just pick it right from there. There's my fraction, and then I can put in exactly what I want. And my fraction, my first one is going to be my scale, which is 1/2 over 2. It's 1/2 inches equals 2 feet, but I just need the numbers in here. So I'm going to put another fraction within my fraction. So this is 1, and then you just change the boxes. And it's over 2 feet. And then I'm going to arrow over so I can put my equal sign. I know that looks a little funny, doesn't it? And it's going to be equal to another fraction because that's how you make a ratio, is with a fraction. So, and proportions are two ratios that are equal to each other. Do I put the 10 on the top or the bottom? It's 10 feet, and feet goes on the bottom. So I need to put 10 down here. On the top, you can put a question mark, you can put an X, you can put some other variable. So there's my proportion. Like I said, you don't have to use this method. you can just type in line and use the slash bar for fraction bar. You'd need some parentheses then. So if I was typing this out and didn't want to use the equation editor, I'd write 1/2 divided by, and I put that 1/2 in parentheses, 2 is equal to x divided by 10. It's just a little harder to do cross products when it's written all in a line like that. And of course, if you're writing on your own paper, then just remember to take a picture of your work when you're done and attach that. Now I can do cross products are equal to each other, so I'm going to take 1/2 and I'm going to multiply that by 10 because I have to go across, and that will be equal to 2 times x. So after you write your proportion, however you get that, then actually solving the proportion, it comes to one line equation pretty quick. Now the reason I didn't change 1/2 to 0.5 right away, which you could do, is because now I have 1/2 times 10. That's just saying what's half of 10. Half of 10 is 5. 5 equals 2x. And then you would divide both sides by 2. Divide by 2. And you get 5 over 2 equals x. Now what was this in? This was in inches. We're missing the inches part. So you can write 5/2 inches equals x, or you can write 2.5 if you prefer. But then that's our answer right there. All right, let's look at the next section. There's a couple more of those for you to finish up. It says, using a scale of 1 to 2, figure out the actual dimensions given each scale. And I solved this one for you. So it says 4 to what would be equal to a scale of 1 to 2. So we're going to let x be our missing dimension. We're going to do this very similar to the last one, except this time the x, the unknown, is the bottom number of our second ratio. So 1/2 equals 4 over something. We're not sure what yet. And then you can solve this using proportions, using cross products, or you can use mental math to solve this as well. So our answer for up here would be 4 to 8. So you're going to do these all the exact same way as this one. They're all using the same scale of 1 to 2. So that will be the same proportion, except you'll be changing the top number to these numbers in each one. This is really exactly the same as well, except that the scale is 3 to 4. So in your proportion, we're going to use 3/4 equals 6 over our unknown for this one. And the other problems in this section will all be done exactly the same way as I did this one, or I started this one, except that the 6 will change to one of these numbers. Let's finish this one up here. So I set up my proportion. The scale is 3 over 4. It will be equal to 6 over some number. I wrote my proportion. Now I'm going to solve using cross products. So 3 times x equals 4 times 6. I'll do this over on this space here. So 3x equals 4 times 6. And 4 times 6 is equal to 24. Now I just need to solve this for x. So I divide both sides by 3. And I get x equals 8. So our answer is 6 to 8. All right, on the next section, it says to figure out each scale factor. And again, I've done this one for us. So 2 inches over 8 feet equals 1 inch over, and you might be able to do this in your head. I wrote this one out as a fraction using the equation editor again, so it'd be easier to see how I did this. So 2 inches over 8 feet. You need to get the top number to equal 1. The numerator needs to be 1. So if it was 2, I need to divide both numerator and denominator by 2 to find the answer. That's all you have to do. And then put your units back in. So 2 inches over 8 feet is equal to 1 inch over 4 feet. All we're really doing is simplifying these fractions. And then the last section is some word problems. There's some where you just have to find the scale factor. So then you're going to use this model that I don't know why I cut some of that off, that the scale dimension over the actual dimension, that's equal to scale factor. Scale dimension over your actual dimension. So in some of these, that's all you have to do is find the scale factor, like in number 21 and 22. So you write it like a fraction and then simplify your fraction. On the last few problems, 23, 24, 25, and 26, you are given the scale factor, and then you are going to solve the problem using the scale factor. So you can set up a proportion to solve. So let's look at 23. It says the drawing of a box has dimensions that are 2 inches, 3 inches, and 5 inches. The dimensions of the actual box will be 314 times the dimensions in the drawing. So that's our scale factor, is 1 over 314. So let me just sketch this out a little bit. Our dimensions of our box are 2 inches by 3 inches and 5 inches. It doesn't really matter where they go, if it's length, width, and height, but those are the dimensions. And it says the actual box will be 314 times the dimensions in the drawing. What are the dimensions of the actual box? So this was 3 separate problems. Our scale factor is 1 over 314. And our drawing is 2 for the first dimension. And we're looking, let's call that the height. So we're looking for the height using this proportion. And then we'll be looking for we'll call this the width. So we'll be looking for the width using this proportion. And we'll be looking for, I'll call this the length. That's a 5, so you're using the same scale factor each time. You're just finding the missing real dimension. And again, you could probably use mental math for that, but that's how you would solve this one with proportions. So you still need to find the new dimensions. And one more problem that I'll start for you, 26. So it says, on a map of Cameron's town, his house is 9 inches from school. That's the scale factor. If the scale of the map is 1400, but that's not the scale factor, sorry. That's I'm going to go back up here to show you this again. That's the scale dimension. And then they also tell us the scale of the map is 1400. So we have scale dimension. I spelled that wrong. Scale dimension, no S there, over actual dimension. That would be the scale factor. And they tell us that the scale of the map is 1 over 1400. So that's our scale factor. And on the map, his house is 9 inches from school, and you need to know the actual dimension. We'll call it D this time to be different. So we've got our scale factor, we've got that's a 9, it looks kind of like a letter, doesn't it? Like a Q. And then we just solve the proportion, and then that will tell us how many feet. It's going to be a lot of feet. We might even want to change it to miles. Let's finish solving this problem. So cross products say that this would be 1 times D, which is just D, is equal to 1400 times 9. 1400 times 9 on my calculator is equal to 12,600. That's a lot of feet. If you want, you can change this into miles. So to change into miles, 1 mile, you don't have to do this part, but is equal to 5,280 feet. Which means that if I want to change this into miles, I would need to divide that by 5,280. So divide by 5,280. and it's about 2.4 miles. Just to kind of put it in perspective of, we usually think more in miles than in 12,600 feet. It's hard to picture. So if you have any questions or you get stuck, please, you can send me an email anytime. Come to my office hours, come to the ASC when I'm there, and we will get help. But this section is really all about solving a proportion using a scale factor as one of the ratios. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.